It's a rare find to have characters that can fill the void of a big stage the way that the Big Four did during that period of time. Um, and to have someone with that mentality to come through again, like, of course, we're probably going to be waiting.
He's got so many options. He's like creative on the court. He kind of is a bit of unpredictability there, as well as like the firepower that he's got. And that's maybe enough to put, even some little bit of doubt in someone like Novak if they did come up against each other.
I wonder, say, if Murray came onto the tour now, would he find it as easy to have the belief that he was going to make it to all those finals, make it to all those Grand Slam finals where, he's so close, but he's just not quite there? And would that have led to him winning in the end?
Welcome back to the Getting Grip podcast. We're going to say not much going on this week, but actually there's probably too much going on this week because there's been about 500 tournaments going on and I'm trying to keep up with all of it.
That's the scheduling for you.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. That's the debate. Scheduling again. The debate that will never go away. We've had Argentina Open. We've had Rotterdam. Delray Beach. Qatar.
Qatar, yes.
Anything else?
No, I'm sure there was another one, but I can't think of it.
At this point, I'm just listing countries that maybe I'd like to go to at some point. I mean, I don't know. What was your standout from the tournaments that have been going on at the moment? I know what my one is, but I'm intrigued to see what has stood out for you among the plethora of tournaments that have been going on.
I think it was nice on the women's side because it was Swiatek back to her best. She sort of brushed Pegula aside in the final in Qatar, which was, it was just a demolishing. It was like 3 in love or something. It was, So that it's great to see her back on top of her form. I don't think any of us doubted it went away. I think the Australian Open was, again, it's just one of those things. You get upsets at those big tournaments, even for the main seeds, which is why we love a Grand Slam, because it's a different format and stuff. But the stuff through the weeks, and also again, nice to see Pegula making deep runs in tournaments. So I was very happy with that side of things. I think the men's side of things is interesting because of what it says about generations, and this is what we can come on to later, of basically what's happening in tennis. I think the women's tour is very interesting because that switch away from the way it had been, say, maybe the last 20 years, we're starting to see some more dominant characters, which might come through. But the men's is almost going the other way.
Well, I think it's good on the women's side that we seem to have, we certainly got Swiatek. I mean, she went on that crazy winning streak last year, and then we've got Pegula, who seems like she's going to hang around that top bracket, and then maybe the likes of Sabalenka and Rybakina, if I can say it right. Players like that are maybe going to also kind of hang around this kind of the latter round, should I say, of like the Grand Slams and the bigger tournaments and stuff. So it's nicer to have, in terms of like storylines and rivalries and stuff, to have, a few players in the mix there that you can be fairly confident are gonna be there. You're not just gonna like turn up to the tournament and be like, whoa, who's it gonna be this week? Some random person that I've never heard of. So that's good on the women's side. Yeah, on the men's side, we've been saying for a while we're like in almost like this transition, right? But the like big guys have been like holding on, albeit they're in the like mid-30s now, but they're obviously a bit more susceptible to injury. Nadal being the obvious one. Federer's now retired, and Murray's he's battling away, but he's not at the level that he was at. Like, he's going to the best level he can with the hip that he's got and all that sort of stuff. I hate to mention it, but he does have a metal hip, shockingly.
It's a very good point. I think he's an argument for someone who might never get back to his best, but if he can, I think we'll see it this season on the grass courts. And if there is another level to Murray after we saw at the Australian Open and some longevity in him, I think the shorter points for the grass court season will help spur that on. I'd love to see it. Don't expect it, but can't count him out.
Yeah, it's again like we've said before. It's almost like a little bit frustrating because we know he like if he was in tip-top condition, like he could beat these guys. Like we just know it. But the fact, I mean, he can still beat
Yeah,
them now, but it's like it seems to just take him a longer time to beat them. He's not doesn't quite have that like ruthless edge as much as he did maybe in the past. And then that like once you have a long match, it feeds into the next one, and then the body catches up with you a little bit. So yeah, these the big three, big four, whatever's left of them, like they're still there and thereabouts, but it's kind of opening a door a little bit for what we call, well, we had the next gen, right? This is always the thing. We had the next gen, which was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, with the like a little group of players like Medvedev, Team, Tsitsipas. I mean, I'm
yeah.
probably missing a couple other players. And then
But
we've got,
that's the point. That's the point. The fact that they're not just rolling straight out of your head is exactly why maybe that didn't have quite as much of an impact.
yeah, I think it's a timing thing as well. I mean, it's the type of players that are coming through, and it's like a timing thing, right? So like when those guys were coming through, you know, like the big four were still, what were they doing? Their early 30s at that point still. I
Yeah,
mean, Federer slightly older,
yeah,
but they were still, playing at pretty much their top level. So
yeah.
you got to kind of give them, I suppose, a bit of leeway in that respect. Like this, like you play against three or four of the best players ever, and they're still in their like top form, top condition.
Mm,
To break through that is, incredibly difficult, no matter like how good you are. Whereas I suppose now it's, yeah, you've got Djokovic who's still, close to that level, if not at that level,
yeah.
and then Nadal is sort of, you know, here and there. Like he comes, like some tournaments he comes in and he's in like good condition, and again he's really hard to beat. Other tournaments like the Aussie Open just gone, it's, he's got a niggle and maybe he's a little bit slower and he hasn't quite got the confidence. So that kind of opens the door a little bit to these other guys, and obviously the main ones that roll off the tongue are Alcaraz, Sinner. There's a few others. I mean, you got like Massetti, Sonego maybe, but I think the main ones we kind of look at are probably Alcaraz, Sinner, maybe even Fritz. Actually, Fritz is, I don't know, is he 22? He's still pretty young.
Yeah, he's sort of midway between the generations. And that's again the point. It's not like they come through in batches. It is a slow trickle constantly onto the tour. But we tend to try and group these players together because it makes it easier for these sorts of debates and
Storylines.
analyses and storylines. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you view the different groups? Should we say, like, what do you think is the reasons, or maybe other reasons why the next gen, so the guys who are now in their mid 20s at least, struggled to break through compared to maybe these younger guys? You feel like these younger guys have got more of a chance? How do you kind of compare them in terms of like mentality, skill level, that sort of thing?
It's interesting, right? I mean, we're looking at arguing effectively what the metric is by where we can determine which players are better and all that sort of stuff. So if we go by Grand Slams as our metric by which the players are better or worse in these generations or whatever, then you come out thinking, okay, well, there was the big four, which then became the big three, and then became sort of now just one. Um, and then you've got all the fringe players around that. Even during the period of the big four, you like, and again, which period? Because it spanned about 20 years. What we're looking at there is all of the players around that were still winning on the tour, because it's not like the big four only won everything. Yeah, all right, most of the Grand Slams, pretty much all of the Grand Slams were just them. But when it comes down to all of the other tournaments, Masters, 500s, 250s, that's all different, because you will get lots of different players rising up through there. And the format favours that. You argue that sort of the five setter on the men's side is a mentality based thing. So I think there's a key element here is that you can't say that these eras belong specifically to those four players, or that they should only belong to, say, four players, because again, it doesn't reflect everything that's happening. It only reflects what's happening most prominently in the media and on the biggest stages. And I think that's what we're missing. Like, it's a rare find to have characters that can fill the void of a big stage the way that the Big Four did during that period of time. Um, and to have someone with that mentality to come through again, like, of course, we're probably going to be waiting. Where's this argument? We were spoiled for the last 20 years or whatever, you know. Federer and then Nadal came along, and then Djokovic were there, and Murray was competing with them. You know, there's all these arguments to say, like, wow, like, how did we get so lucky during that period? Before that, most players had 2 or 3 years of being excellent, but then they couldn't make it last beyond that, maybe injuries or something like that. So again, it all depends on that metric. But there are always players that we think about as being among those great players. They still won, but that's what we're looking at as being the players now. So, for example, when you think about Tsitsipas, Medvedev, team when he was at his best and all that sort of stuff, well, who are they really? They're Wawrinkas, Tsongas, Berdicks. You know, these players were prominent during the Big Four era. So,
yeah, you're always going to get players that have like a hot season or a hot couple of seasons, right? I remember even like Cilic, he had a few different seasons actually where he did pretty well at the Grand Slams. He won the US Open, didn't he? Maybe that was like 2014 or something. And then that year when Federer came back and won his last kind of couple, he lost to him in the final of Wimbledon and then the Aussie Open like the next year. So you get these players that kind of, they still have good seasons, but like to back it up year after year is the difference, right? That's what elevates you into the top bracket. And I think it's been a similar story for the next gen guys where, like, you know, Team, for example, he had like a couple of good seasons. He did win that US Open, albeit like during the pandemic. And he would, you know, he played Nadal a couple of times at the French and might have got like a set off him or something. And there was times where it was close, but there's just that little difference. Same with like Medvedev. He had a great season. He beat Djokovic when Djokovic was going for like all four. Albeit, you know, Djokovic might have been a little bit tired, but like Medvedev had been playing like insane. And then, Tsitsipas again, he's had like a few Grand Slams where he's got to the latter stages, but it's just, trying to repeat it like year after year is the difference, which is maybe why these guys have kind of like almost forgotten a little bit about them, or they sort of faded to the back of our mind, because it's like, oh, well, are they going to do it this year, or is it going to be another like year where they might win a few 250s or something and get to like, I don't know, quarterfinals of Grand Slams, but not really take it on another level. Maybe that is just, you know, the best level they can get to. I mean, we've probably talked about this before. It's like, we don't know how hard these guys are like pushing in training and stuff, but I'd imagine like, you know, at least a couple of them are like pushing almost as far as they can go. And maybe it's just, you know, they can't get to that level. The big three or four, like they took tennis to a new level basically. And people think, oh yeah, it is mentality. Sure, it's mentality is like one of the most important things, but also let's respect the fact that they're just like insane tennis players. The fact that like Nadal and Djokovic or whatever can still win slams when they're injured, to me, I mean, yes, mentally that's incredible. It also shows like they still have like the skill level to be able to compete even when they're not like physically at their best. So you just got to respect like the actual standard of tennis that they can play at. Maybe that's just to a higher level than these other guys are just going to be able to reach. Maybe that's just it. Maybe it's not necessarily that they're mentally not quite there, albeit that plays a little bit of a role. But yeah, I think now with these, well, with the likes of like Alcaraz and maybe Sinner as well, there's a level there I've seen which is like, that intrigues me as to like how that's going to match up in like a best of five against, you know, like an informed Novak. That's, for me right now, that is like the most interesting storyline, if you like, is like, oh, Alcaraz versus Novak in like a best of five on, I don't know, a hard court or something. That there's like, you know, there's jeopardy there. There's like, you know, Novak could lose that. Like Alcaraz has got this level which is, you know, he's beaten sure he's beaten him in best of 3, and he's got the belief as well that he can do it, and he's got the skill level, he's got all the shots. So that, yeah, for me, that makes it a little bit more exciting with the couple of these younger players, that maybe there's something there, that there's a level that maybe they can equal or maybe even take it beyond in future years. What do you think to that?
And that's where that argument comes in.
Must be the
I was going to
lag.
say that's where that argument comes in again, like the idea of Alcaraz coming onto the tour. How can you compare that to what's happened in the past? Well, it kind of reminds me of Federer coming onto the tour with the likes of Pete Sampras being a dominant character. Pete Sampras wasn't an amazing. Oh well, yeah. This is where I'm going to really lose some heads here. Pete Sampras was an amazing player, but when you think about the unstoppable nature of the big four that we've had of late, he wasn't one of those characters. You had a lot more upsets on the tour at that time. He was the dominant character, but he might not have been indisputably invincible. You wouldn't go into every tournament, every match and go, look, he's going to win and I will have to eat a hat if he doesn't. Whereas now you sort of go into a match with Djokovic and you do think that. But then when Federer came along with Pete Sampras, that big upset started to happen. And you start to question whether, it's as easy for the dominant character to then get through tournaments and win quite as easily as they once did. And maybe that plays into mentality as well. Like, maybe the fact that someone can finally challenge is enough for everyone to think, oh, I can finally challenge. There is a way, someone can do it. And this is where I think Alcaraz is paving the way for that next side, which I don't think has happened until now. And maybe that's because there's only one major character now, arguably. Whereas in previous years, there had been 2, 3, or 4 major characters who, you can't beat all of them in a tournament. That's impossible. Maybe you get one of them, but beat all of them? Wow, you've got to be a good player for that. And maybe people didn't quite have it in them. So again, it comes down to this argument of mentality and stuff like that as well. And, as someone who's a geneticist, it comes down to also the argument of nature versus nurture. Like, some of these people must be hardwired to have the ability to weather the psychological pressures, to remain as calm, to fire themselves up when they need to use anger rather than destroy them on the court, for example. Like, all of these things, it's going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, I think, that's again another thing that stands out with Alcaraz is it's like there just seems to be no fear there. It's kind of he sees like possibilities. He's got so many options. He's like creative on the court. He kind of is a bit of unpredictability there, as well as like the firepower that he's got, and that's maybe enough to put even some little bit of doubt in someone like Novak if they did come up against each other in a big match. He's got all the attributes. Like, physically, he's unbelievably quick. He's got the power. He's got the touch, even with like the drop shot. So it's just, I guess.
But how long was he off the tour? How long was he off the tour before he came back and just won again? Was it like 2, 3 months? He was just off the tour,
at least,
not playing. Back, wins straight away in Argentina.
And and he's just getting started again, isn't he? So that's pretty scary for the other guys, I think. It's just again, for him, I think it's just bringing it's becoming a little bit smarter, because he's already won a Grand Slam, sure, but there's like levels still to go for him where he's picking the right shot or the right time to come in. And I saw a little bit of that already actually in the Argentina Open, like that he seemed to pick better times to come into the net, or he just was a little bit cuter in the points and he wasn't so quick to try and like pull the trigger. If he can bring all that together, then I think that matchup with Novak over like a best of 5 could actually be a pretty interesting match, because I don't know if it's, to be honest, Sinner is also someone he looks exciting, but I've seen little kinks or little kinks in the armor a little bit in like when he played Alcaraz, for example, at the US Open. Like he should have actually probably won that match. Like there
Mm,
was chances he had there, and I see that and I'm like, maybe there's just like some small frailty there. It's not to say he can't get over it, because obviously, take Murray for example. Like how long did it take him to actually get to that first Grand Slam? Like,
yeah.
so there's that. Yeah, that's still recoverable. But right now, I just see Alcaraz as like ready to take on Novak in that best of five match, which is the most intriguing storyline for me. And then these other guys, these next gen guys who are a little bit older. I don't know whether, like we said before, whether there's like levels they can go up any more levels. To be honest, maybe they've kind of reached the highest point they can. Even someone like Medvedev, I don't know. He's kind of like faded a little bit to the back of my mind because
Mm.
I don't know what I believe they can do it in a best of five. I don't know what you think about that.
Again, you don't see anything that's convincing you. It doesn't matter whether you look at it on how they play in a match against one of the better players on the tour, or how the statistics look for those players. Ultimately, they don't live up to the hype that they might have been given. And for me, that's enough evidence to say, I'm not saying they can't get over it, but they haven't shown that they are the next big thing yet. And I know that Tsitsipas tries very, very hard to paint himself this way, which, God, it looks fake. But he clearly isn't, because he can't back himself in those big moments. He can't back himself against the big players, and you can't garner that consistency. We've got a lot of very good players on the tour. I'm not debating that. They're excellent tennis players. But again, that mentality and that pool's only going to get stronger. More and more people in the world these days are given the opportunities to do what they love. And accessibility to things, it's not perfect yet, but it's getting better. Every year, there are going to be more and more talented players. So, we're treated to, an excellent level of tennis across the board, but it makes it harder for someone who would have been the big four. I wonder, say, if Murray came onto the tour now, would he find it as easy to have the belief that he was going to make it to all those finals, make it to all those Grand Slam finals where, he's so close, but he's just not quite there? And would that have led to him winning in the end? Because maybe the competition is better now. So there are a lot of arguments as to why, tennis has evolved and tennis has improved, but the storylines and how that affects characters and that side of things, it requires complete steel.
Yeah, it's so much more professional than it was like 20 years ago, and there's so
Exactly.
much like science that goes into it. Like you just look at the sport athletically and it's just like a whole other level.
Yeah.
The way these guys are moving on the court, it's just incredible really. I mean there's other players we haven't actually mentioned as well. I suppose like Auger Aliassime probably would be another one that potentially, he's like 21 or something. He's still pretty young, actually younger than you might think, because he's been in quite a few big tournaments already.
Yep.
He's another guy that's got ingredients to potentially go all the way, but again, is it again like a belief thing? Like athletically fantastic, like got all the shots, but like he got into that 5-set match against Rafa at the French, and there's just that little bit at the end there that to get over the line, which is like the hardest bit. It's whether he can find that next level, but again, maybe someone like Alcaraz is going to like try and pull these guys up with him as he goes. But it's
Or stomp them down.
or just destroy everyone, and then like get injured for a little bit and come back and just win straight away. It's like there's almost like there's so many parallels with Rafa. It's just ridiculous. Even him coming back from injury is like Rafa, like straight back winning a tournament. It's just ridiculous.
It's like someone who does what I do decided, oh, Rafa's a good player. Let's make another, but make him look a bit more like Novak.
Yeah, let's just merge. Like we said before, he's like almost like a test
Yeah,
tube, like combination of like Rafa, Roger, Novak. But like, yeah, maybe we'll
that's a
see more.
testament to his coaching there as well. Let's
Yeah,
face it.
maybe we'll see more of these kind of players though. Like as you said, as people get more opportunity to take up sport, you know, people that might have considered going into other sports who have got like the physical attributes as well as the mental attributes like Alcaraz has. Maybe there's just going to be more of these guys that come through, and you're going to see
Yeah,
more of these like all court players, guys who've got the movement, they've got the power, and they've got the touch, and obviously the strategy and the belief. And maybe that's just a natural progression of any sport to kind of take it to the next level as it's become like more and more professional. So maybe there'll just be someone that comes like another 17 or 18-year-old that just comes out of nowhere and that we're not even on our radar at the moment. Yeah, it's exciting. I think we're always looking for like different rivalries, right, and new storylines. We've loved the big four and now big one, but it's time for it's time for some new rivalries. I think that's like when we were watching that talking about Breakpoint and stuff. That's kind of what that's trying to build on, right? It's trying to build up these kind of new storylines and kind of bring more people into the game because we know that these big guys are kind of going away, that it's like who's going to fill that void.
I think the best thing to ask is what anyone else might think, because obviously we've got our opinions. We know what we want to see out of the tool, but other people are going to have their own opinions as to not only who they think is the next big thing, but also what they think is tennis's next sort of natural progression point, because all sports change, right? All sports develop a new angle that makes them more interesting. Interestingly, actually, if you ever see paddle, international paddle, which could be played competitively as well, that's starting to garner quite an audience. And that can only be a good thing because that's a new sport for people to get excited about and probably include a lot of the same things that make tennis so great. So there's a question as, are some of these new things, these new sports going to draw fans away from tennis? But greater accessibility of information, we can all be fans of everything all at the same time, can't we?
Just follow like 20 sports, no problem.
Yeah.
I don't need to work, it's fine. I'll just watch sport all day.
The dream.
Yeah. Let us know if there's any players that we haven't picked up upon, or different styles of tennis maybe or ways you see the game going in the future. Any rivalries to take note of. And if you've enjoyed it, give us a follow on all the different podcast platforms and on YouTube. Like it, share it around, and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.